Hello, my name is Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about letting go of voluntary and involuntary. This is the great game that we play in life. We like to distinguish between what I do, what I chose, my effort, versus what happens to me, what is done to me. We like to distinguish between voluntary and involuntary action happening, doing. And this is an illusion because there's only the self, of course. There's no other, there's no separation. And the self, like when you're dreaming at night, created the world. And it's not other than the world. Just like when you're dreaming at night, everything in the dream is you, and nothing in the dream is other than you. It's all you. And so the self is the world. Nothing is other. But it chose to create this. It designed this and experiences it through its various points of perspective, through characters. And it wasn't pushed upon or forced upon. It's not something that is forced upon the self. The self is creating this willfully. And so it is not involuntary. And as such, it's impossible to claim the status of victim. You can't play the victim. Nothing ever happens to you. Nothing ever is done to you of some otherly involuntary will or happening. It's this keeping up the delusion of voluntary and involuntary that we maintain this idea of me and other. Me is everything that's voluntary, other is everything that's involuntary. And so it's best to let go of this division of voluntary and involuntary. Now, as I say, the self willed, chose, created, does everything. You could say from this point of view that everything is voluntary. Now, I've used this example in the past, but in the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, the self voluntarily, through this body mind, voted for Hillary Clinton. The self voluntarily elected Donald Trump. There's no contradiction because it's playing all the parts. It's kind of like a novel writer or a movie script writer. When you're creating a world and all the characters and having adventures, you also create scenarios where things don't go according to the character's wishes. You also, have scenarios that the characters can then fix and overcome. So, although the self through this body mind voted, the self elected another direction, and that's like a novelist or a movie script writer. You gotta consider that the character's viewpoint has its own understanding and ignorance, wants and desires. But this is all according to the self. The self wants and desires as this body mind, this, that, or the other thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it gets it. And so the entire world is created, designed, willed to be as it is by the self. But as part of, perhaps, this body-mind character, or perhaps the one viewing currently the body-mind character, perhaps its role is to attempt to improve or change what is as it is for the better. Because everything changes, and it is perhaps the slight input from a body-mind character to make a change. And that's all within the will of the self. And so there's this voluntary aspect. You can see everything is voluntary. Now, of course, that's from looking at the self as the chooser-doer. Other teachers, of course, will point at everything as there is no doer, there's no choice, there's no free will, everything just happens. And that's another way of pointing at what is. But from this point of view, you're saying everything is involuntary. And really, that's what it comes down to, is no longer picking and choosing. You can't pick and choose and say, I chose this, but I did not choose this. This is voluntary, but this is involuntary. In letting go of voluntary and involuntary, you can basically say everything is voluntary or everything is involuntary, but you can't hold both. You can't, you have to go with one or the other, and it's kind of your own inclination, whether you want to say everything is voluntary or everything is involuntary. But that is how you let go of voluntary and involuntary, this dichotomy, this division between happenings and doings and things like that. But anyways, hope you liked the video. If you have any questions, please post below. Also, if you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe. Also, share the video with people you think might be interested in it. But until next time, thank you much.